You're warm right now. You didn't earn that. The heat just comes. Somewhere behind a wall, a machine is quietly doing the work your body used to have to do alone. If you're cold, you put on a jacket nobody died to make. If you're hungry, there's food in the next room that isn't going anywhere. If night falls, a switch on the wall replaces the sun. Now strip all of that away. No walls, no jacket, no food waiting for you. Just your skin, a small fire that might not last the night, and a cold so total it can stop your heart before it even wakes you up to say goodbye. Frostbite doesn't announce itself. It creeps in through your fingers and toes while you sleep, and by morning, the damage is already done. That wasn't a bad week for your ancestors. That was Tuesday. For over 100,000 years, through actual ice ages, with glaciers burying entire continents under ice a mile thick, average temperatures dropped so low that summer in parts of Europe felt like winter does to you now. Humans didn't just survive that. They had to beat it every single year, for generation after generation, or the story ended right there, in the snow, with no one left to remember it. You exist because every one of them found a way to win. Let's talk about how. Clue 1. The eye of a needle. At a site called Denisova Cave, and later across Ice Age Europe, archaeologists started finding something strange sitting next to human remains. Tiny slivers of bone, each one drilled clean through with a hole smaller than a grain of rice. Bone needles. Dated to roughly 40,000 years ago, that single object changes everything. A needle that fine means someone wasn't just draping an animal hide over their shoulders. They were sewing fitted clothing, layered, tailored close to the body, sealed against wind at the seams. Multiple snug layers instead of one loose one. That's the difference between a coat and a windbreak. Compare that to our evolutionary cousins, the Neanderthals, who mostly wrap themselves in unshaped skins. No needles have ever been found at their sites. It's a small technological gap, a single sharpened point of bone, but it may be part of the reason one branch of humanity pushed further north into the deepest cold, and one branch eventually didn't make it at all. Clue 2. The house made of mammoths. At Mezherich, in what's now Ukraine, archaeologists uncovered something that looks almost impossible. The remains of an actual dwelling built from the bones of over 60 mammoths. Skull stacked in a ring as the foundation, curved tusks arched overhead like ribs, holding up a covering of hide. There were no forests on that frozen steppe, no timber, no branches to bend into a frame. So the people living there used the only large building material the land had left them, the skeletons of animals that had already lost their own fight with the cold. They built shelter out of the dead to keep the living warm. And inside that bone house, a fire pit shows they burned animal fat as fuel, because there was no wood left to burn either. Clue 3. Fat was survival currency. Here's the part that sounds backwards. In a brutal enough winter, lean meat could actually kill you faster than hunger does. It's a real, documented condition called rabbit starvation. Eat only lean protein, with no fat or carbohydrate to go with it, and your liver can't keep up with processing it. Your own body starts poisoning itself, trying to digest the very food that was supposed to save it. Ice Age humans learned this, likely the hardest possible way, and it reshaped how they hunted. Fat became the real prize, not the meat around it. Marrow, blubber, organ fat. That's why sites are full of shattered long bones, hunters cracking them open for the fatty marrow inside, instead of leaving them for scavengers. Fat wasn't a treat back then. It was the difference between your bloodline continuing past that winter or ending on a frozen plain nobody would ever find. Clue 4. Fire that never got to rest. Keeping a flame alive mattered as much as building one. Excavations of Ice Age hearths show layers of ash built up over years in the exact same spot, meaning groups didn't relight fires from scratch each time. They carried embers, protected coals, and passed a single fire forward through the darkest months. Because in that cold, a fire that went out could mean a group that didn't wake up. Someone was always awake, always feeding it, always watching it. Survival wasn't a daytime job. It was a shift that never ended. So, clothing that sealed out the wind, shelter built from the bones of the dead, a diet secretly engineered around fat instead of meat, and fire tended around the clock by someone who couldn't afford to close their eyes for too long. 4 separate survival systems running all at once, with zero margin for error, for months at a time. But here's where it gets strange. Some of the harshest Ice Age sites we found aren't survival camps at all. They're graves. At Sungir in Russia, archaeologists found two children buried together, head to head, covered in over 10,000 hand-carved ivory beads, each bead estimated to take roughly an hour of skilled labor to make. That's thousands of hours of work, spent in the coldest, most resource-starved conditions humans have ever endured. Not on staying alive, but on honoring the dead. Think about what that actually means. These people were burning calories and daylight hours they couldn't spare, at the exact moment when every calorie was survival itself. To bury two children with more care and craftsmanship than most royalty receives today. Winter didn't just test their bodies, it tested what they valued when everything was scarce. And they chose each other anyway, even after the people they were choosing were already gone. That's the twist most textbooks skip entirely. We picture Ice Age humans as pure survival machines, grinding out one desperate day after another, with nothing left over. But the archaeology tells a stranger, more human story. They had enough spare belief in each other to spend their single most precious resource, time, in a season that could kill you for wasting it, on grief and beauty and love, for people who could no longer feel either one. Zoom out, and the cold starts to look less like an enemy and more like a filter. It didn't just kill the weak, it selected, ruthlessly, for cooperation. The bands that shared fire instead of hoarding it, split fat evenly instead of keeping it for themselves, and stitched clothing for each other's children before their own. Those were the bands that came out the other side of the ice, generation after generation. The ones who turned inward, who split apart, who stopped watching each other's backs. Winter erased them so completely that we don't even have their names to remember. So when you feel that pull to check on someone in a hard season, or to save a portion of dinner for a person who never even asked for it, that instinct isn't soft, and it isn't new. It's ancient. It's 100,000 winters old, hammered into your biology by ancestors who learned, in the most unforgiving way possible, that the ones who shared were the ones who lasted. You're not just descended from people who survived the cold. You're descended from the ones who made absolutely sure someone else survived it with them.